5. Bangar Fort. Built in the 17th century, India's Bangar Fort is thought to be the most haunted place in all of India, causing the local population to build a town away from the abandoned military installation and outlaw anyone from entering the grounds after sunset. Yikes! The fort consists of a small city with temples, palaces, and multiple gates throughout, all allegedly crawling with ghosts and goblins. The sprawling grounds cover a large patch of land at the foot of a picturesque mountain, but according to locals, all is not well. There's no shortage of local legends surrounding Bangar Fort, but two stand above the rest. The first legend tells of a holy man who lived in Bangar Fort and built a house that he didn't want any other house to eclipse. He warned that should the shadow of any taller building ever touch his home, he would destroy the entire fort. Someone built a bigger house, the shadows crept in on his home, and he subsequently burnt the fort to the ground. The second big legend says a curse was laid on the city by a mythical wizard, as he was killed by a woman he tried and failed to put a spell on. He was crushed by a boulder, he cursed the city to be destroyed, and sure enough, marauders soon sacked the fort and killed each and every resident. Both legends are equally dark and only help to reinforce the ominous presence in the stone walls. Despite so many people steering clear, the fort is still incredibly well preserved. The fort is even open to visitors during the day, but come sundown, all bets are off. The Archaeological Survey of India has put up a sign reading, quote, "It's strictly prohibited to enter the borders of Bangar before sunrise and after sunset. Legal action will be taken against those who do not follow these instructions," end quote. Yeah, that's the nice version. Some locals have said that going there at night means staying there forever. There's only one way to find out, I guess. Number 4. Hang Sang Dung. Roughly translating to Mountain River Cave, Hang Sang Dung in Vietnam is the world's largest cave. So large, in fact, that it can hold a modern-day skyscraper inside of it. And it's got its own small jungle in there, too. It's located near the Vietnam-Laos border. The cave was found by a local man named Ho Khan in 1991. The locals, it is said, were too afraid of the cave to go exploring because of the sound coming from the fast-moving underground river, as well as the huge vertical drop. And who could blame them? The cave was generally left untouched until 2009, when a group of scientists from the British Cave Research Association began an extensive survey of the cave's depths. According to the man leading the survey, the cave is 5 times larger than Phong Nha, which once held the title of the largest in Vietnam, and the biggest chamber is over 3 miles long and almost 1,000 feet tall. And then there's the subterranean jungle. The jungle of Hang Sang Dung is formed underneath the collapsed roof of one of the caverns. Once the roof collapsed, just enough light spilled into the cavern so that vegetation was able to creep in, slowly from outside. As the vegetation took hold, larger and larger plants began to grow, and now hornbills, flying foxes, and monkeys dwell in its branches. The entire process took years, and it's one of nature's happier accidents. And as you'd expect, Hang Sang Dung is a tourist hotspot, but tours ain't cheap. On the lower end, they can start around $3,000 and go all the way up to $5,000. Number 3. The Nazca Lines. Stretching across nearly 200 square miles of a high arid plateau, the Nazca Lines are one of life's greatest and most exciting mysteries. The lines are drawings of hundreds of figures ranging from giant spiders to vast geometric shapes to enormous monkeys as large as 890 feet. Hummingbirds, fish, sharks, or orcas, llamas, and lizards, and depending on who you ask, even astronauts, aliens, and landing zones. One of the most tantalizingly mysterious archaeological mysteries, these geoglyphs spawned with wild theories about the ancient Peruvian peoples that made them. One significant reason there's so much interest in the drawings is the fact they can only be fully seen from a few hundred feet in the air, meaning that the people who created them never would have any way to see them in full, or perhaps they did. One will never know. The giant glyphs were made between 200 BC and 600 AD, the time of the technologically sophisticated Nazca people, who are believed to have created the lines. They were created by scraping a 10 to 30 centimeter layer of iron oxide off the dry desert floor. Now, due to the incredible dryness and consistent weather of the area, this was all it took to create images that have lasted for well over 1,500 years. The lines were first systematically studied by the Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Mejia Giuseppe in 1926, and ever since it's been a mystery. But then how did the ancient Peruvians manage to orchestrate all this? The most likely construction method involves putting stakes in the ground, tying a rope between them, and then scraping the dirt off along the rope, as if following a giant ancient stencil. This would explain the geometric shape of many of the lines, as well as how the Nazca would have kept the measurements for the drawings in ratio to each other. By simply multiplying the measurements of a drawing into rope lengths, wooden stakes found in the ground at the end of some lines support this theory of creation. But no one knows why they made them. That's where everyone is stumped. One possible explanation is that the lines were made to be walked on as a sort of ceremonial procession that is a sacred area where the Nazca prayed to various gods involving agriculture and water. The shapes were then never meant to be seen at all, and so seeing them from the sky is just a fun byproduct of the artwork. But when you have markings in the sand like this, the alien conspiracy theorists tend to come out of the woodwork. Lots of people will tell you the Nazca lines were created by ancient aliens who communicated with the Peruvians and used the lines as navigational devices or even landing fields of some type of ancient astronaut. Despite the figures having been examined by numerous anthropologists, ethnologists, and archaeologists, not to mention New Age hippies, ancient astronaut theorists, and alien enthusiasts, we may never truly know what the Nazca lines were meant for, or how the Nazca people intended them to be seen. What we do know is that they're incredibly fun to think about, the good kind of conspiracy. But these lines have seen some intrusion and damage over the years. When the Pan American 1S highway was constructed through the area, it transected the lines themselves. Another incident happened in 2014 when Greenpeace activists ironically walked across part of the plane to lay a banner near the hummingbird. By not wearing the special protective shoes used by researchers, they caused permanent damage to the soil. Number 2. Jatinga. Bird lovers beware. Over the last century, thousands of birds have flown to their death over a small strip of land in Jatinga, India. In a town of only 2,500 people, this bizarre occurrence remains mostly unexplained. After monsoon season, 44 species of birds in Jatinga suddenly become disturbed in the evening hours. Becoming strangely disoriented, the birds plunge towards the lights of the city and to their doom. While the birds have been known to occasionally plunge to their deaths, it usually is the villagers in Jatinga who do the actual killing. Believing them to be terrible spirits flying from the sky, the villagers took to capturing the birds with bamboo poles and then beating them to death. Despite the danger and the repeat performances every year, the birds continue to fly to their death in this small area. A number of theories have been proposed, one suggesting that a combination of high altitude, high winds, and fog leads to the birds becoming disoriented. The light attracts them as a sort of flight stabilization, and like moths to a flame, they take the plunge. Another theory suggests that the weather of the region leads to changes in the magnetic qualities of the underground water, causing the birds' disoriented state. We may never know for sure, but what we do know is this village loves to bash those birds, so much so that wildlife and bird societies in India have gone to the village to educate them about the phenomenon in an attempt to stop the mass murder of these birds. Since then, the bird deaths have decreased by 40%. Government officials in Assam hope to use the phenomenon to attract tourists to the small city, and some work has gone into creating accommodations for visitors in Jatinga. It's certainly a strange way to put a place on a map. Number 1. The Kryptos Sculpture. Kryptos is an awesome sculpture by the American artist Jim Sanborn, located on the grounds of the CIA headquarters in Virginia. Since its dedication on November 3, 1990, there's been much speculation about the meaning of the 4 encrypted messages it bears. 3 out of the 4 messages have been solved, but the 4th remains an absolute mystery, and it's one of the most famous unsolved codes in the world. Sanborn has already given 4 clues to entice cryptanalysts, but so far everyone remains stumped. But these first 3 answers are long and were only solved by a computer scientist, CIA analyst, and Canadian logician, and NSA employees. If you want to solve crypto, then you need to do a little bit more than the Sunday Times crosswords. You need to be a mathematical genius. Naturally, there are multiple online communities dedicated to solving the final message of Kryptos, and Sanborn has been feeding them clues from 2006 to 2020. The answer to the 4th clue lies not only within the answers to the first 3, but already existing famous clocks around Berlin. To this day, only one person knows the real answer to the final clue of Kryptos, and if he dies before it's solved, then the answer may just die with him. I'll see you next time.